Thank you for staying with us here on Newzroom Afrika as we make sense of the results that were announced yesterday and some discussions that are taking place today and what's expected later on here as the ANC wraps up its elective conference. Ziyanda Ngobo is our reporter who's just outside our studio and having a conversation with Mdumiseni Ntuli. Ziyanda, how is he reacting to what happened yesterday?
Good afternoon, Clement. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to find out. And just to update our viewers at home, there's some movement with the media being called into the plenary. So we're edging closer then to the closing address by President Cyril Ramaphosa. But let's bring in Mdumiseni Ntuli, who was on the ticket to become Secretary General. Your numbers, you ended up scoring third at 1,080 votes. And your campaign seemed to cut across the provinces. In fact, you weren't even backed by your own home province, KwaZulu-Natal. Your initial reaction to the announcement yesterday?
Well, thanks, Yanda. Good afternoon to you and the viewers at home. Let me congratulate the newly elected leadership, President Ramaphosa and the collective, particularly the new SG, Comrade Fikile Mbalula, who has a huge responsibility on his shoulder. But on the same vein, I sincerely want to humble myself and convey my deepest gratitude to the structures and members of the ANC throughout the Republic of South Africa who place their faith and confidence on my candidature for the position of the SG. And I want to end by saying to them, what has happened here was democracy at play. We now have elected the leadership, together with the rest of my colleagues who stood for various positions, have a responsibility to rally behind this leadership and unconditionally provide support to them.
What do you think went wrong? Was it an issue of your own home province not supporting you? Do you feel hard done by KwaZulu-Natal for not backing you?
I think the major problem is that we're in the early stages of defeating what is called the slate politics. The ANC membership is not yet accustomed to the long tradition of the movement, which requires that we must identify leadership on the basis of their individual suitability and capability for certain responsibilities. And until we can't renege on that strictly, we've got to wage it to move ahead, because the slate politics has been a major source of our problems throughout the years. And I think the challenge when we were at conference, a few hours before voting, there was a realignment of what I may call forces, for a lack of a better word, where slates were produced. And those of us who did not belong and never supported any association with any slate, obviously were disadvantaged. And I'm saying that is largely because the electoral college of the ANC, the branches of the ANC and the membership of the ANC, still has a long way to be properly engaged about the need and the necessity for the movement to gravitate away from the slate politics, which has been, as I said, a source of our problems in the movement.
Yesterday we heard from the Provincial Secretary in KwaZulu-Natal, Begum Tolo, saying, that there's no sort of kingdom status that KwaZulu-Natal has, that they should be in the top 6, which is now the top 7 structure, I should say. What do you have to make of what's been described as militancy without influence? So yes, they may have the numbers on a physical perspective in terms of they're the largest grouping, but is there something to be said about being such a large grouping and not being able to consolidate and be able to have influence over a conference as big as this?
The ANC, KwaZulu-Natal, is the biggest voting population of the African National Congress, and the biggest. It also hosts the biggest membership of the ANC. Yes, it does not have a God-given right to become part of the top 6 or the top 7 of the African National Congress, but it is a strategic approach that in the total composition of the leadership, including at the apex level, it's advisable that you should always have somebody coming from the biggest part of your own totality. And KwaZulu-Natal occupies that special place in the African National Congress. However, it doesn't mean that if nobody is elected, as it has been the case now, it then presents a disadvantage from the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal or from the ANC in general. In fact, what matters most is how the leadership elected today and the provincial leadership relates with one another in the course of advancing the work of our movement on the ground. That will determine whether the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal leverage effectively in the elected leadership at the national level to ensure that we campaign effectively and defeat the opposition parties in KwaZulu-Natal.
You've spoken about slate politics and the difficulty with the struggle, as you described it, with moving away from that kind of politics. Even now, as the voting for the additional members, i.e. the NEC, the 80 member NEC, there's been a list going around which does not include your name, Mdumiseni Ntuli, and that of former KZN Chair Sihle Zigalala. And I would trace this all the way back to the Provincial Conference. Do you think that this is a deliberate move by some within the province not to have you form part of even the NEC?
You know, there is a strange phenomenon that I've identified within the organization in KwaZulu-Natal, and that this may very well be permeating throughout the movement in the country. That is an increasing and intensification level of hatred among comrades, among people that were supposed to be calling comrades. Because for anybody to decide, me and Comrade Sihle have been nominated overwhelmingly to be on the ballot for this National Executive Committee. When I was made aware that there is a circulating list supposedly associated with KwaZulu-Natal, which has excluded my name and that of Comrade Sihle Zigalala, I said, there is no better way to explain that behavior except a heightening level of hatred and personal vendetta, which would be very difficult to explain by myself, by Comrade Sihle, and including by those who are involved in that game, because neither myself nor Comrade Sihle have in any way behaved in a way that contradicts, undermines, and seeks to go against whatever that is being done by the provincial leadership in KwaZulu-Natal. I saw that list, I was very worried about it, and I honestly believe, I hope that later on it will be discovered that it's not essentially something that is true. If it happens to be true, it says something about the quality of the people we call our own leaders. It means the ANC has a major responsibility to do what I've been advocating for. That some of these people we have in the organization, including those who are in the leadership, are not genuine members of the ANC. They are in the ANC for their own personal agenda, and they will do anything and everything to destroy anybody that stands a chance to oppose the advancement of their own agenda. And I'm saying I hope sincerely that what we saw being circulated is rather fake as opposed to something that truly was generated by my own leadership. If it was done by them, I think we should be concerned about it, because it perpetuates divisions in a way that is contrary to the value system of the African National Congress.
Just lastly and very quickly from my side, if you are on the NEC, would you and have you been approached to possibly become national spokesperson? I've heard that this is the talk of the town, this little town that we find ourselves in called Nasrec.
The SG of the NC, Comrade Fikile Mbalula, worked with me for almost half a decade in one office in the organizing department. So I will take any responsibility that he assigns to me. If he makes me whatever that he thinks would be my own contribution, given my talent and my own skills, I will take it. What I can say, as a matter of fact, that me and him, if I'm elected to the NEC, would form a partnership that would be very strategic and very effective in the advancement of the cause of our movement. That I know, because he enjoys my unconditional support.
All right, and he's also mentioned that he will be finding something for you to do. He believes in your talent too. Well, that's Mdumiseni Ntuli. He was on the ticket to become Secretary General, not closing the door to any other possible role that he could contribute towards the organization. But we'll be waiting then for the outcomes of the vote for the additional members, which is expected at some stage today, and the closing address by President Cyril Ramaphosa expected as well to be delivered sometime this afternoon. Let's take a short breather and we'll take and continue after this.